When you develop a Python program, you need to know, does it actually work? With Python, there are many ways to do so, but in today's video, I will show you how you use vscode and Jupyter to run your code interactively. Since Python is an interpreted language, there are relatively many ways in which you can easily run your code. You can run it in your terminal, you can use a debugger, you can even use a Jupyter notebook, although that's not my general preference. So when I first got in touch with Python, I came from a background of using R, and I really like using RStudio because RStudio came packed with a code view, and at the same time you can interactively run your code in a window next to it. So when I switched from using R to using Python, I immediately started looking for a way to emulate that coding experience that I had in RStudio, but then with Python. And after a while and figuring things out in VS Code, I discovered that by using the Jupyter plugin, you can actually come pretty close to the way in which RStudio is set up, but then in VS Code. Sounds interesting? Then let me take you into the next part in which I show you how to set this up in VS Code and how you can leverage the Jupyter extension. So in order to get this setup to work, the first thing that you need to do obviously is install VS Code. But then if you have VS Code and if you use a Python file as I am doing here, so when you select a line and you run it by calling Shift-Enter, what you see is that down below on the terminal, automatically a Python interpreter is opened and the code is ran. And this behavior is the bit that we specifically want to change. So in order to get there, what you need to do first is go to your extensions and then look up Jupyter and then install that extension. So what you see for my specific case is that I have it installed and enabled already, but if you haven't, then you need to do this first. So with that out of the way, the next thing that we need to do is adjust a specific setting. So what I'll do is I'll open the settings view and I'll look up that one. So Jupyter send selection. And then the top one reads that when you press Shift-Enter, the selected code from the Python file is sent to the Jupyter interactive window instead of the Python terminal. So what I do is I select that setting, and then when I go back to my script, make a selection of code that we want to run, and then press Shift-Enter. And then what you'll see is that the code is sent to the Jupyter interactive window, but as we're seeing here, the first thing that VS Code is prompting me for is that the IPython kernel package is missing. This is because I haven't properly set up a virtual environment for me to run my code in. So let's get that out of the way first, and then we'll dive back into the script. So in order to set up a virtual environment, what I did is write a bash script that you can see here, in which I use Mamba to create a virtual environment called vJupyter. That's what you can see here. And then as soon as that environment is created, what it'll do is it'll look into the requirements.txt file and install the packages that I intend to use for this video. So as we can see down below, Mamba has finished creating the virtual environment and installing the packages. So what we then do next is we open up the Python file again. And then in order to ensure that it uses the correct virtual environment, I open up the command palette, I use select interpreter, and then here I look up the vJupyter environment. Now with that out of the way, as soon as I press Shift-Enter, what we'll see is that it starts up the Jupyter interactive window, and now it actually works because it has IPython kernel installed, and then as soon as it has booted up, it'll start running my code. And there you have it, it completed running the code, which I can collapse by double-clicking it. So with that out of the way, I can continue to run the rest of the code in the script that I wrote specifically for this video. And the script doesn't do that much. It just loads a few files from an S3 bucket on AWS, and then I run a few commands to show how the interactive window works. So what I'll do first is I'll import the utility functions that I wrote for interacting with AWS. I'll set a few constants that you can see here, and then I'll initialize an object to communicate with S3. And one of the things that you're already seeing here of the interactive window is that I can just select pieces of code that I want to run and then step by step run through my code. So I'll do the same thing here for getting a list of pages with objects. And then what's nice is that I can also call the variables in which I store results of the calls that I make to inspect what is in there. So in this case, Based on the function that I ran here, I get returned a list of JSON data wherein information is hidden about the data that is available in the S3 bucket. So to get a bit of a better view of what's in there, I run the next few lines of code in which I get a better idea of the prefixes found in the S3 bucket. So there's the taxi data prefix, and then beneath it, you'll see that there are a bunch of CSV files. And since I only want to load the CSV files, I run this list comprehension to filter those out. So from there, what I'll do is I'll just pick the last file that's in that list. So just to check, we end up with the yellow trip data 2022-3. So that's the last element in this list. And then we load that from S3 into a local data frame. And then the nice thing here is that if you've loaded data into your active session, then you want to get an idea of what's in there and what it looks like. And especially there is also where the Jupyter interactive window shines, because I can call head and just take a look at what is in the data set. Or perhaps I can call describe to get a bit of an idea of the data that's in my data set and some descriptive statistics. And also from there, I can generate a few histograms or other visualizations. And the nice thing is, because I'm using the Jupyter server, it automatically comes with built-in functionalities to visualize these. So there's no extra things that I need to do apart from the fact that I installed matplotlib at the beginning. And then another thing that I like about using the interactive window is if I, for example, call a loop, as I do in this snippet of code here, when it breaks, I can actually look up the element that it was looping over to see where it failed. And in this case, that was taxi data. And since in this loop, I'm trying to load a CSV data from S3, and this is actually not a CSV file, but a directory, it obviously makes sense that it breaks here. And it also is immediately clear for me how I can fix this. Now, one of the things that is also quite nice about using Jupyter is if you go down here below in your section of your terminal, you can click the Jupyter tab, and then you get an overview of the variables that you have in memory at this time, similar as you would have in RStudio. And as an additional feature, what you can do is, if, for example, you have a data frame as a variable, you can inspect its contents, and then given that you have the proper extension installed, so in this case I have Data Wrangler installed, you can see the contents of your data frame. Now, of course, you can also run your script in full. Just what you do is you go to your script, you make sure that you select everything, and then you press Shift-Enter, and then it runs. And with that, we've come to the end of the things that I wanted to show you in today's video. So I'm curious to hear from you. How do you run your Python code in your favorite IDE? Do you use the terminal? Do you use the debugger, the interactive window like I do? Or do you maybe have a completely different way of running your Python code? Let me hear what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoy this type of content, then don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.